right. So hi, Essence. How's it going?
Hey, I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing very well. I just want to thank you so much for taking the time to talk with us today. My name's Dorian, and it's really nice to finally meet you. It's so nice, after doing all this research, to finally meet the person face to face, or I guess Zoom to Zoom. So, can you just give us a
Yeah.
second here to introduce yourself and your business so that people who haven't had the chance to meet you yet can get the chance to?
So, thank you once again for having me. Hi, my name is Essence. I'm a 22-year-old fashion designer, author, actress, and motivational speaker. I started my company Essence Couture when I was 10 years old. I published 3 books that are mandatory readings in schools, and I am a full-time entrepreneur.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much. So, starting off, very general sense, can you give us the quick origin of Essence Couture? I'm saying that right, Couture.
Yep,
Okay, good,
perfect.
good, good. Because I saw the name of the company at first, and it was taking me back to my days, because isn't couture kind of like a French word? Um,
It is. We.
yeah, 'cause I was
Yeah.
terrible at French in high school, and I had to go back and try
Uh-huh.
and get my pronunciation back, but it wasn't working out. So Essence Couture,
No, you killed it. Yeah.
fantastic. So is there any, story or experience that inspired the business, or did you always sort of have this mindset as a young kid trying to make this work?
So honestly, I think your purpose is always one of those things that finds you. So in the midst of not having the word entrepreneur in my vocabulary, it was still something I was so naturally drawn to because my mom was a business owner. So I always saw her doing her thing and she had an event planning business. So she would always take me along and I'd be helping with the snow cones and the cotton candy while she's running the event. So I was always in the entrepreneurial atmosphere. And so, again, this is something my mom took notice of. And she saw my love of fashion and it followed me until 10 years old. And one day she said to me, she's like, you're still very passionate about fashion and creating. Is this something you'd want to turn into a business? And I said yes. And my life changed forever after that.
That's crazy. And that's something that I feel like I hear a lot with our interview guests is that their parents are, sort of in the entrepreneurship field or,
Mhm.
they've had some sort of experience. And even our last guest was becoming an entrepreneur at the same time as their mother. So was business and financial literacy something that was super talked about in your household or, was it something that you all had to learn together?
This was taught so much that oftentimes it didn't even feel like a lesson. It felt like a lifestyle. And it was one of those things that came so naturally, not even just to my mom, but to all of my family, my relatives. Everyone had their own hustle, everyone had their own business. I think it just came from being born in the midst of bosses. Everyone didn't like being told what to do, so they became that person in position. But overall, it was one of those things where my mom would host events in our living room and sell merchandise. She would, again, take me to these events with her that she would be planning. I always had the best birthday parties growing up because she would be the one to plan them. So it was little things like that would constantly leak into our lives, and business was always getting mixed with personal in that way. My mom taught me how to turn a passion into a profit, if that makes sense.
I really like
Mhm.
that. I really like that expression. And walk us through, what were some of those businesses that, your mom and your family members had?
Okay, so my mom, once again, event planner. Currently, she is the head owner of our virtual assistant firm, so that's something I contribute to as well. We have a Godex hair collection company line, and we specialize in holistic wellness and things along those lines. At one point, my aunt was considering a boat business. I don't know if she's still looking into that, but just my granddad has his own security company. So those were constantly just things in my ear growing up. My stepdad has a mechanic business. So everyone's kind of got their thing.
Right. That makes a lot of sense. And that's just interesting, it's such a, diverse background of jobs around you, but then clothes is what you settled on. And that's
Yeah.
really interesting to me. And if I read this right, you started making these clothes at 6 years old, right?
Yes, I was pulling sheets off of my bed and turning them into gowns. I was cutting up clothes. I'm just grateful that I had such a encouraging and supportive household in the midst of doing all this. But I've always loved fashion for as long as I can remember to this day. My favorite part of my day is picking my outfit in the morning and just setting the tune and the energy for the day. And yeah, it's one of those things that I've always adored, and I'm just again grateful to have been encouraged for that adornment along the way.
Hmm. And you sort of took the next question out of my mouth, and that's, some of those first products you made. You said something about sheets. Like, can you go more into some of these first products that you made, not only like, for the business, but also like as a kid just growing up?
So once again, I was taking sheets off of my bed and I would like tie them and turn them into these gowns and model them in the living room and while listening to Taylor Swift. I remember one time, oh my goodness, my mom let me wear my Halloween costume to summer camp. And I took this pink leopard cheetah costume and I turned it into a summer camp outfit some way somehow. I remember my first t-shirt design was this bedazzled clown that I drew, and it was the first time, getting things converted to a vector file and then printing it on the garment and seeing my label at the end of it. So I definitely remember those first few, and some of them I actually still have too. It's just a reminder of what I started to begin with. So they're always really nice, comforting keepsakes.
Oh, that's really cute. And you say, you use all these words like vector file, like all this printing and stuff. How did you turn, from cutting up sheets in your bedroom and wearing, these outfits to summer camp to actually getting in with like production companies and manufacturers? Can you talk a little bit about that transition?
Yeah, so networking is so important. It definitely takes a village. I'm fortunate that my mama had a lot of connections being in that entrepreneurial field, so she was always introducing me to new people. One of her friends that she met in corporate had a clothing line, so they would help me as far as sewing the garments and learning what the back end process and everything looks like. And it's really just a matter of learning along the way. I'm always one to attend a workshop in my community. If there's ever hey, we have a community sewing class, or here's an entrepreneurial event to network, I'm always want to show up and show out at those places. It's not about what you know, it's about who you know, and just building those relationships. And once you're in the right space, oftentimes people are just willing to share and teach and receive that information as well.
Right, that makes a lot of sense. And so what I'm getting from this is that a lot of your connections and stuff is not only like, from your mom's connections, but also like a mentorship sort of. So can you talk a little bit about, methods of study or mentors that you used early on in your career in order to start learning more about this crazy world of manufacturing?
Man, mentorship is so important. I look at all the people who have helped me along the way, and I feel like these are names that I'm always keeping in the back of my mind for a thank you speech. These are the people that make me me and have taught me so much, not just from a business standpoint, but a life standpoint. We never know what's going to be thrown our way. Here's how to manage that and business simultaneously. And one of my mentors that I commend immensely, his name was Shabby Lewis. He unfortunately just passed, but he was on Project Runway, and that was a really big dream of his. So to have been able to see him make that dream come true in his lifetime, it's so inspiring. And it's constantly just a reminder of know where you came from, know where you're going, and take all those lessons with you along the way.
That's great. And I'm so sorry for your loss, but it's so great that, he was finally able to get on Project Runway.
Yeah,
Really
to
great.
see someone like achieve that thing they're always talking about is no feeling like it. Yeah.
And, it's definitely different when you're making the clothes by yourself in sort of a for fun way versus when you're doing it for part of a business. Can you, sort of go back and talk to us about some of those first challenges that, when you started the business, you didn't see these coming and how you overcame them?
Okay, so one thing they don't tell you is you have to do a lot of things you don't like in order to do that thing that you love. And of course, nothing that compromises your morals or anything along those lines, but just in terms of business, I don't like administration work. I don't like having to go through a bunch of paperwork, but it's such a significant part of the process. I've learned to respect it. You want to read all your contracts all the way through, make sure you have a clear understanding of everything you're signing. And I think for me personally, aside from that, a lot of it was just currently speaking, I'm a web designer now, creating my own website because I have a vision and I want to see it through. And sometimes it's easier to do things on your own as opposed to explaining them. So it's a lot of learning how to do a little bit of everything in the midst of being an entrepreneur, because you want to be educated on different things So that way, when you are putting someone else in place, you can still oversee and follow and keep up with everything that's going on within your company.
And that's also just so funny. It's something that I've kept hearing over and over again from a lot of my interviewees is that the legality side of things and like this paperwork and like they were like, oh, it started off like as a dream, you know, when I was a kid, and then boom, like hit with a stack of paperwork, like reading
Yeah.
through contracts, the legal stuff. It's so like
Yeah.
expected almost. Is there anything else that was sort of unexpected, you know, not just from the business perspective of like manufacturing, but like the business world as a whole? Like were there people you met or things of that nature where you were just, wow, like this is not what I was expecting when I was meeting this person for the first time?
One thing I can say, just generally speaking, is you find out that people are just people. Everyone's coming into it from different backgrounds, different stories, and it's funny how you all align and cross paths in this way. I will say entrepreneurs are some of the most independent, creative thinkers I've come across. They tend to be very, very creative, but also just know how to acknowledge the balance of business as well and just that factor of everything. And they're also some of the most passionate people because you've got to be passionate to be an entrepreneur. You're going to have to sacrifice so much. You're going to have to make so many challenges for a vision that isn't going to see itself through unless you do it yourself. So I think those are some of the common traits I've come across. I'm trying to think, is there anyone personally I can name? I did work with Derek Grace for a bit, who multi-millionaire, incredibly successful author, entrepreneur. He has so many gems to drop, and he was one of those people that was always willing to share knowledge, which I can appreciate. And one of the common denominators that he taught me, and Damon Dash as well, is to prioritize you as far as your mental well-being. I'll never forget Damon Dash. He drew an octopus on a paper for me, and each tentacle represented something different in my business. So here's the book, here's the fashion, here's this, here's that, and at the center of it, he was like, "What do you think it is?" And I was like, "You tell me, you're Damon Dash." And he was like, it's you. You want to prioritize you and your well-being. He was like, "Look at me. I got all these little dogs running around, walking around my house in a row, because these are the things that feed my inner child and keep me living in the midst of love and light as well." So it's little things like that that are important to just constantly being reminded to take care of yourself.
It's a great reminder. And so, you know, talk to me about these clothing articles. I feel like, you know, we've kind of been like dancing around this, but I've heard about this like educational aspect from your bio and all that. But can you talk a little bit more about the clothes that you're making specifically for people these days?
So these days I specialize in custom clothing. I love hand painted garments. I'm very hands-on with things. I like working with my hands. And I've also been doing more research as far as sustainability and just looking at the best ways to approach things that are just more earth conscious. And so I've been doing a lot of thrifting and upcycling garments, and then I'll bring them home and then I'm hand painted them. I'm adding little patterns and things to them and just revising what's already been created. So it's just about moving with intention, moving with the earth a little more in mind, and just keeping the creativity going. I also love nostalgia, so I'm constantly one to refer to the Y2K, the 90s days, and just bring those things back to life. Those are things that fuel my inner child and just keeping light alive in that way. So in terms of fashion, that's where I'm at right now. And so much coming soon. Oh my goodness. So in the midst of creating these hand painted garments, I also want more options because I can't be doing it all myself. So I am going to be looking to do more mass production, getting things transferred on the hoodies. And that's just a preview as to some of the things we have coming soon.
I like that. I like the little spoiler, little teaser for the future. You know?
Right,
So it's something for us
right.
to look forward to.
Yeah.
And so break down also, you know, you mentioned this eco-friendly angle that you're taking these days, but can you talk about like all the services you provide on this website? Because I've also seen things about like your books and like other things like that.
Yes, so the way I remember everything I do is FAM. So fashion designer, that's everything on the fashion planet in the universe of Essence Couture. So these are our clothes, our accessories, which include hats, tote bags, everything along those lines. Then we have author. And so those are where my books are listed. I do a lot with my books, even as far as just mentoring. I've been helping and mentoring other kids improve their reading and writing skills that are inspiring authors as well. So that definitely keeps me busy and keeps the passion of writing alive within me. And then acting as well. I love acting. I love discovering myself through a character. Again, anything in the midst of creation, I'm there. So creating a character is always fun. I have a Peacock project coming out called Bloodlines very soon. We're going to be premiering at the end of this month on April 26th. So be sure to check that out. And then last but certainly not least, motivational speaking. This is definitely one of those dreams that found me. And I didn't even realize that it was a part of my purpose until my launch party. When I launched my business back in 2013, I had to give a speech and thank everyone for coming out. And my mom, she pushed me up there to do it. I was like, I don't know if I want to talk from all these people. That sounds scary. And then I did it. And she said, hey, it's something there. I want you to speak one more time. Just pay attention to the way the audience receives you and tell me if this is something you'd be interested in doing. And that's what I did. And the connection you can make with people from a stage is so impactful. Like, that changed my life forever. So that's kind of a bit of everything I do in the midst of Essynce Couture.
That's so cool. And I'm happy you mentioned the actor thing too, because I was like, I was doing my research and I'm like, an IMDb page, I'm like, what doesn't she do? There's so much more. There's too many things to talk about in one interview. I'm like, oh my goodness.
Yes. Oh my God. Imagine managing it all in 1 week. Goodness.
Too crazy. Too crazy. You still found the time to talk to us, so we really appreciate it.
No, I appreciate you guys for reaching out.
And the books were something that really stood out to me recently. So many people that I've talked to recently have been having these books come out, but you have so many. There's the 6th grade life, the 7th grade life, the 8th grade life. I love all that. But can you talk about how that experience was, like writing books for the first time? I keep coming back. I love this story you've given us at the beginning with, being 6 years old and cutting up sheets. How do you go from there to writing like novels,
So again, writing was just always one of those things I loved. So in school, English class was my favorite class. So I love writing stories. I was always the kid to raise my hand and want to share my story at the end of class. I remember I won like my 3rd grade spelling bee. So it was just always something there that I appreciated. And then I get to 6th grade. Like every mom, my mom asked me the same question every kid gets coming home from school. How was your day at school? And I was never one to give the one-worded answer. I will break it down for here's what happened, here's what the teacher said, here's what me and my friends did, and so on and so forth. And she looks at me and she's like, hey, you ever considered writing this stuff down? And immediately light bulb went off. I was always one to always keep a diary as well. So I was like, oh, this is perfect. And then that's literally what my book was in the beginning. It was just journal entries, my days at school and what I would wear and what I would do, and balancing being an entrepreneur and being a student at such a young age. And ultimately, we just ended up publishing that. And then the Middle School Chronicles series was born.
I like that. And you know what? That's really helpful for, me conducting this interview, that you're a very talkative person and very thoughtful with the answers too. So I appreciate that very much.
No problem.
And, you're constantly changing it up. Like, you have so many different projects, so many different things going on. But in terms of, fashion, how is it that how are you finding new ways to stay innovative and ahead of the competition in an industry that's always changing and evolving, like the fashion industry?
I would say it has to be a balance between looking at your journey and looking at the world. You don't ever want one to overcompensate for another. So there has to be a balance there. And then again, I'm just such a lover of nostalgia as well. I love feeding my inner child and what brings me joy. So oftentimes when I'm trying to find me within my brand, I look back at who I was as a child, because we all know who we are when we're so young. And so I look at the shows I watch, I'll go back and read old diaries and journals to see what I loved then and how do I bring it to life now in a way that's in alignment with who I've grown to be. And yeah, I love using movies and shows as reference. We have so many wonderful muses and inspirations just walking around today, and not even just reference to celebrities, but the cool neighbor down the street who always walks their dog in like the coolest jeans. So it's little stuff like that that I'm always considering. I think you can pull inspiration from everywhere if you just keep your eye open.
I love that. And I love how you keep bringing up this inner child motif, because that's something that you hear in all these businesses, that it's not just for everyone else, even though you're helping so many people, it's also for yourself. And
Yeah.
I feel like the brand is like incredibly representative of you. And being so young, have you ever found that people look at you differently, or the business maybe, in terms of just a respect thing, or is this really like a legitimate business?
Definitely when I was younger. I think now I've been doing it long enough. I've gotten taken a little more seriously, but you can only imagine. Oh man, I will walk. Now I think about this, still does happen today a little bit. But imagine walking into a room. I've got my team with me. My mom is also my manager, and everyone's looking like, "Oh, you're the one speaking. You're the one speaking." They're pointing at everyone that's taller than me, and then they all look, my team, and they're like, "Oh no, it's that one, the little one down there." So I've had so many of those experiences where it's like, "Oh, her," or I'll get up on stage. This happened to me so much when I was younger. I remember I was 13. I just turned 13 that week, and I got up to speak. I was on this panel, and I said, "Hi, my name's Essynce. I'm 13 years old. I'm an entrepreneur." And I could hear everyone gasp in the crowd. And it's things like that you don't forget. And it's so interesting that we oftentimes think of age as something that limits us as far as what we can do for our careers and for our dreams. And for me, we were always pushing that boundary as far as putting me in rooms where I was the youngest. I spoke at my first college when I was 13 years old, and I remember being up there and looking around and realizing I was the youngest one in the room. So it's little things like that, memories that stick with you and show you, hey, here's what you're capable of. Like, don't limit yourself in what you can do.
Right, that makes so much sense. And our last interview guest, Gabby Goodwin, and she runs this business where she creates like bows and like hair products specifically for like Black girls. But
Gabby.
that people keep saying that. I'll say someone's name, they're like, "Oh, I know them." Like it's it's such a big world, but how for some people all don't know each other. It's crazy. I don't know how it's possible. But and she spoke a lot about this importance, of being like a Black woman who's also like an entrepreneur in this world of business. So do you also take the time to recognize like the importance of the work you're doing, as like a young Black woman, like in such a competitive and crazy field, and making these products that, you wish that you would have had as like a young girl? How does that feel, and like how often do you find yourself reflecting on that?
I think I should reflect on it some more. I'm glad you brought that to my attention. I think it's easy for me personally, I think for a lot of us, to fall into, okay, I need to do more, I need to achieve more, I have this I need to do, I need this, I need to check off my list. But I think I do need more of those moments to just sit and reflect on, dang, I have done a lot. Like, let me sit in that for a second. Let me be proud of that for a second. So I appreciate that. And I think as far as the impact is concerned, it's something that I want to see more of. I want it to be so normalized that we don't even need to ask about it. And I think the best way to do that is just to keep doing it and keep the actions and the conversations going. So yeah, that's where I'm at. That was a great question. Thank you.
No, thank you. Thank you for, giving that thoughtful response. I don't know, well, it's something that, just jumps out to me immediately. But as you said, like maybe that shouldn't be the case. Like maybe it should just be normalized for young people, women, Black people, anyone, just to like have success within the entrepreneurial.
Yeah.
So
just have
that's
their own space.
yes, I love that. I love that. And, going from having all these like crazy ideas as a kid, and like those first transitions, like having conversations with, your mom's manufacturing friends. Can you talk about those like first real conversations that you had with the people around you that you actually wanted to transition this into a business?
I remember with my mentor, Shavi Lewis, this was in middle school, so ages 11 to 13, I was going over to his house and he would help me learn the terminology. He taught me a lot about how to speak on what I wanted, because you can't just walk up to someone who's in manufacturing, someone who does physically make clothes all the time, and say, hey, I want a t-shirt with a big heart on it. No, you got to break it down. I want it to look like this. I want this fabric. I want this stitch in this way. I want this font on the shirt. And it's so specific. It's so detail oriented. And so I learned a lot about that language. And then it's the little things you never think of. I was just with, this was maybe 2 years ago, my mom's friends who are entrepreneurs. So Miss Eunice to Mr. Wahi, they have their own clothing line. They were up at 1 a.m. with me in the store, because I had to take a bunch of shirts and have them placed in a mall the next day. So they're up with me at 1 a.m. in their store, and they're teaching me how to professionally fold clothes. So when you walk into your Forever 21s and your Tommy Hilfigers and you see everything folded, there is a way to do it. Everything is so intentional and so strategic in terms of making something pleasing to the eye. So it's little things like that that you wouldn't think of till you're in that position. It's like, okay, there's always so much more to learn.
Always more to learn. I really like that. I like that. It's a good soundbite. Always more to learn. And with your first customers and really putting your business out there for the first time, can you talk a little bit about, branding and these like the importance of like advertisement?
Advertising is so important. Oh my goodness. I want to always get lost. I love the creating process. I'll be here creating and painting and stitching all day long. And then I remember, oh yeah, I've got to promote. I don't know why is this shit gonna stay in here. So I'll end up with like a bulk of stuff. And I'm like, all right, we need to start getting some of this out here. But social media is such a great tool. It's just a matter of using it intentionally, and that's something I always try to do. You don't want to get lost in the sauce on there and you're just scrolling and scrolling. It can happen. We've all been there, but it can be a dope tool when you use it with intention and finding out who your audience is, finding out what people gravitate to, and oftentimes it could be something you don't expect. One of the things I'm learning too is, hey, sometimes I'll make something and I don't necessarily like how it may come out, but someone out there is gonna love it. So it's not always about what you like to. Sometimes it's what your customers are gravitating to. So it's about finding that balance there as far as what pleases you and what pleases your customer. And yeah, marketing is so important. Word of mouth is always important. So going outside and networking and meeting people are gonna pay attention if they start seeing your face over and over again. Like, oh, who's that one? Who's the girl that's always wearing like the custom clothing? Who's the guy who's always wearing that one hat? So things like that tend to stick. I always try to bring at least one thing with me to make me memorable aside with my personality, and just little things like that to stick, give people something to remember. The world is always moving so fast. So what are the things that we remember about the people we've met along the years, and how do we keep that energy and that momentum going?
I like that. And I mean, clearly like you care a lot about your advertising and branding, because the first thing, like when I clicked on the website, I was like, whoa, like this is so cool. It's so unique. I loved like scrolling through the website, like doing like all this research and like looking through the products for the first time was like a breeze. It's definitely been like one of my, it's weird to say a favorite research section, but I actually was like enjoying myself. I was smiling, like there's all these like colors and the story and like, it's fantastic. It's like it's a joy to look at. So
I appreciate it. Hey, look, you know what? I'm redoing my website right now. Just wait till you see that one. You gotta let me know what you think of that one, because I'll put my all into it. Oh yeah. I'll be
refreshing. I'm looking forward to it. But no, like just know that as someone who's looking at it for the first time, I was like, really cool.
Thank you so
cool
much.
Website.
Yeah.
Of course. And continuing on about this happy trail of questions, but what have been some of your biggest successes so far in business? Like, what are some moments that you can look back on and be like, wow, like I really did that? You're like, it might be crazy to think about, from a younger perspective, but you already have accomplished such a big thing.
One of my greatest accomplishments, one of the first things that come to mind is just the connections I've been able to make. I've met some reflections, I'll say that, and I think we're all a reflection of one another in one way or another. But I did this speech once and I read my book. I read a chapter from my book in the midst of my speech. And afterwards, I had a girl come up to me in tears just to say, hey, I thought I was the only one who felt like this. So thank you for sharing this. Thank you for being vulnerable in that way. And it's moments like that it's a reminder of just the humanity in it all. It's a reminder of being brave and not being scared to be vulnerable and put yourself out there. I think the best work that is received is the work that is authentic, because that's where people see themselves. So I think that's a great accomplishment. Yeah, just the connections I've made along the way. I would say that.
That's great. And going back to how we talked about some of your earlier obstacles within business, can you talk about some more modern obstacles and things you have to navigate now that are kind of like maybe a day-to-day pain or it could be a bigger thing, but can you talk about how you emotionally, and I guess within the terms of the business, but more so emotionally, like deal with these sorts of like setbacks?
All right, I'll give you a cute one and I'll give you a real one. So the cute one would be I work from home a lot as an entrepreneur. And I don't like being in the house all the time. I love being outdoors. I love exploring. So I'm always trying to find new ways to take my laptop with me and take my work with me outside. I started doing live painting and painting garments in public just to keep things interesting, just to keep things fun for me, because I always want to be able to enjoy what I'm doing. So that's a fun one. And then as far as a real one, a real obstacle, I would say learning to be kind to yourself. I think sometimes we set goals and we put the world on our shoulders, and it's so unnecessary. And that's something I'm working on because I have so many goals, I have so many things I want to achieve, but kind of like what we touched on earlier, as far as just being reflective and being able to say, hey, I've gotten pretty far. Let me take a moment to acknowledge that and all the work I've put in and all the things I've done. Let me sit in that. Let me appreciate and show gratitude for that. And then we can, proceed forward. So taking those moments to just remember to be kind and just self-care, managing self-care and being an entrepreneur is a whole different beast. You want to make sure you're getting the right amount of hours of sleep you need, because the rest is just as important as the work, if not more. Otherwise, nothing gets done. So I'm in the midst of working on my sleep schedule and we hear this all the time, but just balancing everything. So learning within my business, learning within my day-to-day as well. I have so many personal goals. One thing I'm working on now is learning Spanish. So practicing that, and then reading Rich Dad, Poor Dad. These are all things on the agenda that just keep me stimulated, and learning to make sure that stimulation doesn't become a overwhelming situation.
Right, that makes a lot of sense. Mm-hmm. And, you're still so young, but how do you find yourself balancing, the work-life balance and balancing the time, to take care of your emotional and personal needs, finding the time to connect, finding the time to learn more, still, how do you do that?
Still learning that one. I have to get back to you on that one. But no, I will say I love nature. I love being outdoors. So that's always a tool for me when it comes to reconnecting to myself. I will go outside, I will walk around barefoot and just get grounded. No phone, no music sometimes, really just the sound of my thoughts and the sound of the birds. And I will sit there and I will make myself be present, because that's where we find peace. So little things like that definitely keep me grounded. I'm also a firm believer, again, just putting the phone down, reading a good book, listening to the right music, just doing things with intention, things that bring you peace of mind, being mindful of what you consume. So on the TV, on the radio, everything along those lines. And yeah, I just try to practice being present.
Who are some of the entrepreneurs or business leaders that have inspired you? I know we've talked about your mentors, but is there anyone, sort of really big out there that you sort of look up to?
Well, I'm gonna start with my mommy. She's number one all the time. Von Zell from Rich Von God Productions is someone who is also a mentor to me, and he's done huge things. He actually brought me on to so many opportunities. I think Marseille Martin is dope, having her own production company. I think that's really cool to see. Honestly, I just love seeing people of color doing their thing. To be completely honest with you, I'm real for anybody that look like me. So I'll say that, and yeah, those are some of the main folks that come to mind.
All right, and this is the phone. If you could describe yourself in one word, what would that word be?
Essence. I'm me.
Of course.
Yeah.
That's great. So these are, we've talked about, the humble beginnings. We've talked about modern Essynce. Let's look into the future. Where do you see the business, in the next 5, 10, 15 years from now?
Man, first thing that comes to mind is around the world. And, that's why I mentioned learning Spanish earlier. One of my biggest goals, I've always wanted to give a speech in a different language. That's another something not too many people know about me. But I want to be everywhere. I would love to see my books in different languages. I would love to publish many more books. I've always wanted to do fiction as well. So that's so exciting for me to even think about. I want to see my clothes in different stores around the world. I just, could you imagine the dollar signs and then the euros and the Thai bots, like all of that on the price tag. That's so cool to think about. And even as far as acting, I would love to just continue to dream big. I want to find peace. I just want to remain me. I want to stay at peace. I want to choose happiness every day. I want to keep up with my CMOS and all that good stuff and live life. I want to be present in the midst of living life.
And you teased us earlier with some new projects and stuff like that going on behind the scenes. Is there anything that you can give us a little bit of insight into right now? Like, what are you working on, like products or projects that we can see in the near future?
Definitely working on fashion, always behind the scenes. And one thing I will give a little bit of is I'm working on a new book. So stay tuned.
What is your ultimate vision for your brand and your entrepreneurship journey? I mean, we talk about dollars, pounds, and euros, but is worldwide really the ultimate goal, or are you seeing, even more like, are we going to get clothes on Mars?
That's cool. I would say the ultimate goal for me is always just growth. I think that's always something we should work towards, and yeah, I would say growth. It's so many things I want to do, I want to try. As far as even like collections are concerned, I have so many different design ideas, and I want to tap into so many different eras and layers of fashion. And yeah, I would love to do Fashion Week in Paris or Milan, all these wonderful places. So I'm always brainstorming and just shooting for the stars. There is no limit. Yeah.
So that's all I really have for you question-wise today. Are there any quick shout-outs you want to give? But also, please don't forget to tell us where we can find your amazing products.
Yes, so thank you so much for having me. You guys can find me and my products on essencecosmetics.com. Soon they will be on essencecouture.com. In the midst of the reinvention, I'm literally almost done with this site, and I'm so excited for everyone to see it. It truly captures the essence of Essence Couture. And you can also find me on my socials at Essence Couture LLC or at Essence More. I am on Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, the list goes on. So please check me out. Let's exchange some light and love. And yes, as far as shout outs, shout out my New Jersey fam. Shout out Yusuf Days once again for being on Kendrick Lamar. I'm so proud of him. I think that's so sick. Shout out Maid Stars, shout out Miss Eunice and Mr. Wahid for helping me with my fashion and learning my Spanish on the side. Gracias. And shout out Bonzel. Honestly, the list could go on. So shout out everyone that's ever supported me or contributed to my journey. I really appreciate it.
All right. Well, thank you so much again, Essence, for taking the time to talk with us today. I really appreciate how thoughtful your answers were. This has been definitely up there in my top interviews of all time. Have a great day, and I wish you all the best in your future endeavors.